Jojo Rabbit is an Academy Award nominee for Best Picture of the Year. And now, it's back in theaters nationwide. Don't miss the best movie of the year. Jojo Rabbit, rated PG.
Transformation never stops.
Verizon keeps business ready for what's next.
We weave security into their business,
virtualize their operations,
even build AI into their customer experiences.
We also keep them ready for the next big opportunities,
like 5G,
where machines talk to each other. And expertise goes anywhere.
What do we got?
When it comes to digital transformation,
Verizon keeps business ready.
Need a change of scenery? Kayak searches hundreds of travel sites and filters by cabin class, Wi-Fi, and more, so you can be confident you're getting the right flight at the best price. Kayak. Search one and done.
Any comments, Doug?
Yeah. Only pay for what you need with Liberty Mutual. Only pay for what you need with Liberty Mutual. Con Liberty Mutual solo pagas lo que necesitas. Only pay for what you need. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
I'm Max. I was diagnosed with aplastic anemia, and if I didn't find a donor, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
Be the Match uses the power of the Cisco network to match donors with patients faster than ever, saving lives like Max's.
Me and Dylan are DNA twins. Dylan's like my brother.
Cisco, the bridge to possible.
Not even our competitor's best battery can match the power of Energizer, because Energizer Ultimate Lithium is the longest-lasting AA battery in the world. Energizer, backed by science, matched by no one.
Nobody said it was easy. No one ever said it would be this hard. Oh, take me back to the start.
The Windsors, Inside the Royal Dynasty, premieres Sunday, February 16th at 10 on CNN.
Torn Apart came about because we felt that our clients' lives are often torn apart when they have a work injury. All three of them were the most courageous folks, as all of our clients are. It's unimaginable what our clients go through. These pieces remind us about the importance of our work and the purpose of our work.
Are you paying too much for car insurance? At Root Insurance, we could cut your rate in half. Here's how it works. Root doesn't insure bad drivers, and that means you don't have to pay for their accidents. Everything is in the app. Just drive like you normally would for a few weeks. If you're a good driver, you could save up to 52% on your car insurance. And that gives you extra cash to buy something you really want. Download the Root Insurance app today.
New season starts Sunday, February 16th at 9.
A very good Friday morning to you. I'm Jim Sciutto. Poppy Harlow is off today. The U.S. Senate is ready to try the President of the United States. Right now, lawmakers are back home where they will face constituents days before the official start of the impeachment trial. And while the Capitol may be quiet, the pressure is building over witnesses. Will the Senate call them? And if so, who? Over new evidence. Will the senators consider it? And if so, which new evidence? And from the Oval Office, President Trump is denying that he knows Lev Parnas, a close associate of his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, after Parnas implicated him in the Ukraine scheme. Joining me now on Capitol Hill with the latest on impeachment, next steps, CNN national correspondent Athena Jones. Where do we go from here?
Well, as you mentioned, Jim, the next fight is about the rules. That is what we'll see on Tuesday when the Senate comes back in, Tuesday, 1 p.m. after the Martin Luther King holiday, to begin this trial in earnest. And that's one of the first things they'll be doing. resolution laying out the rules of this trial, whether or not and when new evidence and witnesses will be discussed. And, you know, we've been hearing from a lot of Republicans, folks like Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, who've said, look, it was the House's job to spell out this case. It's not the Senate's job to allow this new evidence and witnesses and to help the House do the job that they should have done comprehensively and completely. So that's the argument we're hearing from folks like Graham and Blackburn and really the majority of the Republican caucus in the Senate. But there are a handful of Republican senators to watch. These are moderates, folks like Susan Collins. And Susan Collins, interestingly, tweeted out this just in the last couple of days, clarifying where she stands on the issue of witnesses. Now, you'll remember in recent days she said, look, I'm open to witnesses. I just think it should be done later, in a later stage of the process. So there you have that tweet, her spelling out step by step to make it very clear where she stands, that she believes in having the Clinton model of impeachment, in which case both sides make their case, senators get to ask questions, and then the issue of evidence and witnesses is decided. Now, so there had been some question that arose because she had raised some questions about Lev Parnas's evidence that he is now presenting and whether it was necessary to hear from that. She's strongly suggesting that she would be one of the folks to back the idea of witnesses and new evidence. We'll have to see if a total of 4 senators do end up siding with Democrats on that issue so that they can get to 51 votes and force it.
Yeah.
Jim?
Well, forgive me for being cynical, but there may be comfort with the Clinton model, at least the parts of the Clinton model they like and the parts of the Clinton model they don't like. Athena Jones on the Hill, thanks very much. The pressure growing on Republican senators to allow new evidence and witnesses as the indicted associate of Rudy Giuliani, Lev Parnas, of course, Giuliani is the president's personal attorney, makes new claims against the president. Here he is with Anderson Cooper.
To my knowledge, the president fired her at least 4 times, maybe even 5 times. I mean, once in my presence at the private dinner for a super PAC in Washington, D.C. at the Trump Hotel. In the conversation, the subject of Ukraine was brought up, and I told the president that our opinion, that she is bad-mouthing him, and that she said that he's going to get impeached, something like that. I don't know if that's word for word, but that she was...
you said that at the table?
Correct.
Where the president was?
Correct. And his reaction was he looked at me, like, got very angry, to John DeStefano, and said, fire her, get rid of her.
Well, we should remember in the president's call with the Ukrainian president, he did say Yovanovitch was going to go through some things. The president's words, Yovanovitch removed from her post in April of last year in the end, a year after the dinner that Parnas described. He also challenged one of President Trump's key talking points, that he did nothing wrong and that there was no pressure when he asked the Ukrainian president to investigate the Bidens.
Zelensky himself has come forward and said, I didn't feel any pressure. There was no quid pro quo.
That's a total lie. They're still. I mean, they're still rocked till this day. They're still not recovered, and I don't know when they will.
The president has repeatedly denied knowing Parnas at all, though a number of pictures have come up with the 2 of them together, some video as well. Parnas has said he is willing to testify if he is subpoenaed during the Senate impeachment trial. Not clear that either Democrats or Republicans want that. Joining me now to discuss, Michael Gerhardt, law professor at the University of North Carolina, and Susan Hennessy, she's a former national security attorney. Michael, if I could begin with you. GOP senators, Marsha Blackburn among them, are blaming the House, in effect, saying, well, the House didn't call these witnesses, the House didn't have these documents, so that was their responsibility. Of course, that belied by the fact that the White House deliberately blocked witnesses and documents. I wonder if you could make clear to folks, given your knowledge, the difference with the Clinton impeachment trial, because going into the trial, those witnesses and documents were already considered at the time, were already available to the House.
That's correct. So let's take a step back initially and remember that what Senator Blackburn said is completely wrong. In the law, we have a word for it. It's called BS. It has nothing to do with actual history. In the history of the House's impeachments, the House has never taken the position it has to do the Senate's work for it, put together a trial. Now go to the Clinton situation where Ken Starr came in and talked about a lot of evidence that he had taken behind closed doors, interviewing, deposing, asking questions of people under oath, and that evidence, that referral that he put together, was sent to the Senate, and then the Senate had witnesses. In the history of the United States Senate, no completed impeachment trial has ever happened that lacked witnesses. Witnesses have always been called. That's the Senate's job, and that's the problem, I think, facing Republicans. If they take the position of no witnesses, then they've done something historic, and it's not good.
Yeah. Well, most Republicans to this point seem comfortable with that. At the same time, you have this possibility of how the trial is going to play out, right? You know, the two parts, in effect, saying, okay, listen, we'll leave that question of witnesses to a later date. Let's first consider the arguments here. That seems to be where many Republicans are settling right now. Do you see that as being somewhat, I guess, misleading, or a signal that what's going to happen is they're going to listen and say, oh, we listen and there's no reason to call witnesses?
Yeah, certainly there's a reason to suspect this is just about kind of trying to kick the can down the road, not say that you're not going to call witnesses and then sort of bury it later. That said, keep in mind sort of the optics of yesterday. The Chief Justice swearing in the senators, them signing this oath book in which they pledged to do impartial justice. They're now going to have to sit there quietly and listen to this evidence. And so I do think we have to ask ourselves whether or not that might change the minds of a few key senators who've already indicated some willingness to hear witnesses. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have 67 votes for removal, but I do think that there is a real possibility that at the end of that really overwhelming presentation of evidence, Republican senators, that 3 or 4 that will join with the Democrats to say, look, we at least need to hear from some additional witnesses in this case.
Yeah, and listen, we often will talk about Romney, et cetera, but I spoke to John Barrasso yesterday on this program, and he said he's at least open to the question of witnesses. Michael, given your experience here and covering this closely, lay out what you think the president's defense is likely to be.
I think the president's defense is likely to sort of take 2 different paths. The first path is that he just did nothing wrong. You've heard this already. And he's going to argue that whatever happened, he'll either, frankly, say some things that may be hard to prove, but the defense will basically be, look, there's nothing bad that happened here, and so a president does this all the time. You might hear that a lot. The second, I think, that they're going to argue is the money was released, and therefore the harm, whatever harm was produced against Ukraine or anything else, it was minimal. So in other words, no harm, no foul, and therefore this is a lot about nothing.
Yeah, and you might hear multiple arguments, right? Even contradictory ones, right? Saying it didn't happen, but even if it did happen, it's not impeachable. In the midst of this, Susan Hennessy, the GAO comes in and says it was illegal to hold that aid. Now, you have many Republicans, Congressman Lee Zeldin among them, saying, "Oh, this is a partisan organization. It's led by someone who was appointed by Obama." But the fact is, if you look at the GAO's history, I mean, it's a nonpartisan organization, and the argument they're making here is not an outlandish one, because I know for a fact there were folks in the Pentagon concerned that, listen, Congress appropriated this money. That's Congress's job. And it's a problem if we're not spending money as Congress appropriated.
Right. So GAO is certainly not a partisan organization. Yeah. It is a nonpartisan organization. I think that they are plainly right as a matter of law that the administration was not allowed to do this, that they were violating the law. We saw administration attorneys being concerned with that. And the reason why it might be significant, GAO isn't a judge. It's not a court. Nobody's going to go to jail over this. But by saying that the president has broken the law and the administration has broken the law, that does make the impeachment case a little bit cleaner and clearer for the American public. You don't have to have a statutory offense or a violation of law in order to impeach the president, but the idea that the president didn't just do something that was wrong or unpatriotic, he actually violated the law. I think that's something that's going to be easier for the public to understand why the House took this extraordinary step of impeaching him.
And Michael, the law is quite clear on it, is it not? That if Congress appropriates the money, that money's got to be spent. The president, and there are laws that were passed, after Nixon that specifically prohibited a president from saying, you know what, Congress may have appropriated it, but I disagree.
That's completely correct. So let's just remember basic constitutional law. It's the president's job to enforce the policy that Congress makes. The policy here was to appropriate money for Ukraine's national security. That's the policy. It's not up to the president to modify that, to change it. particularly to suit his personal interests. There was no grand objective, noble objective, or anything for changing congressional policy. It was all done for the personal benefit of the president.
Michael Gerhardt, Susan Hennessy, thanks very much for your expertise on this. Any moment now, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He'll be making an appearance at the State Department. We should note that so far he's not responded at all to reports that an ambassador of the United States, Maria Yovanovitch, was under illegal surveillance in Ukraine. Why isn't he saying anything about her? Also, we're now learning U.S. troops were injured in that Iranian missile attack. The Pentagon initially saying there were no casualties. Why did it take so long? They're saying now that they suffered symptoms of traumatic brain injury from those attacks. And a CNN exclusive, the wife of Andrew Yang has broken her silence. She says that she was sexually assaulted by a doctor and having to watch her accused attacker walk away with what she says was just a slap on the wrist. We're going to have more.
Smartsheet can do.
Breakfast combos with all-you-can-eat pancakes? This calls for all-you-can-eat silverware. Get IHOP's all-you-can-eat pancakes free with the purchase of any breakfast combo. Or just get the 2x2x2 combo with all-you-can-eat pancakes for just $4.99 Monday through Friday.
Wireless for $15 a month. That's not right.
It's right, all right. Carpet showers? That's not right.
That's not right.
Neither is the way you get wireless. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right. We're easy, online, and just $15 a month. Get your plan today at mintmobile.com.
Attention anyone on Medicare. 2020 Medicare Advantage plans are now available. Did you know you may now be eligible for additional Medicare-approved benefits, including dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage? The toll-free Medicare Benefits and Questions line is now open to help anyone on Medicare make sure you are getting the benefits you deserve. Just call 800-998-2101 now to find out if you're eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan that includes additional benefits like free hearing aids, free eyeglasses, free meal delivery, and free rides to medical appointments. You may also be eligible for premiums, $0 deductibles, or no copays. Just call the toll-free number on your screen now to see if you qualify for additional benefits. There is no obligation to enroll. The call and Medicare benefits review are absolutely free. Did you know you may be eligible for additional benefits with a Medicare Advantage plan that includes additional benefits like dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, free hearing aids, free eyeglasses, free meal delivery, and free rides to medical appointments? Just call 800-998 now to find out if you're eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan that includes additional benefits like dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drugs. You may also be eligible for $0 monthly premiums, $0 deductibles, or no copays. Call 800-998-2101. 2020 Medicare Advantage plans are now available. Just call the toll-free number on your screen now to make sure you're getting the benefits that meet your needs. There is no obligation to enroll. The call and benefits review are absolutely free. Just call 800-998-2101. That's 800-998-2101. Call 800-998-2101.
Jojo Rabbit is an Academy Award nominee for Best Picture of the Year. And now, it's back in theaters nationwide. Don't miss the best movie of the year. Jojo Rabbit, rated PG-13.
Don't get mad. Get E-Trade, dog.
Smartsheet can do.
The Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is set to appear at a public event at the State Department at any moment as he meets with the Foreign Minister of Pakistan. So far, he has not said a word following the release of stunning messages that suggest former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Marie Yovanovitch may have been illegally surveilled before she was forced out of her post. And involved in that, a close associate of the president's personal attorney. CNN national security reporter Kylie Atwood is here with me now. Kylie, you've been asking about this, I know, repeatedly in the State Department. Yeah. Ukraine, the thing they're investigating is the surveillance of the U.S. ambassador, not all the other stuff the president has wanted them to investigate. Why has Pompeo stayed silent? It would be a very simple statement to say, of course we're concerned about the safety of our ambassador.
Yeah, and we've gotten some kind of drips of information from lawmakers on the Hill. So House lawmakers have said that they have been assured by diplomatic security at the State Department that they're going to be investigating this. But as you say, the State Department and the Secretary himself have not come out and said anything about the matter. And there are a few things that are really important here. The first of which is that the Ukrainians have already announced that they are going to be investigating this. Right. And then the other thing to consider is that it's not as if the State Department stays quiet when it comes to the security of U.S. embassies and U.S. ambassadors writ large. Just over the weekend, I asked them about the security of the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. They gave me some lines on that front. They don't get into the details, but they talk about it in broad strokes. They are making a choice not to do that here. And it has been more than 48 hours since these developments that Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch was apparently being surveilled by these Giuliani associates.
Have they ever given you an explanation as to why the Secretary himself has not stated?
No, they haven't said anything. And we should note that the Secretary has never publicly defended Ambassador Yovanovitch at all. And he has done that for other ambassadors. And then the other thing, as you know, Secretary Pompeo, a big part of who he is are the Benghazi hearings. Yeah. So he was grilling then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the State Department for answers about what they did for the security of U.S. diplomats around the Benghazi attack. Now, obviously, this isn't apples to apples. Ambassador Stevens obviously was killed in that attack. Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch is safely back in the United States, but still, he is someone who has pressed the State Department for answers, and he's not providing any answers or any commitment to an investigation just yet.
Yeah, and accuse the State Department at the time of sort of dereliction of duty, right? Not
right.
With me now is Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley. He's a member of the Intelligence and the Appropriations Committees. Congressman, thanks so much for taking the time this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So you heard the conversation there. Ukraine has launched an investigation of Yovanovitch and announced so publicly. Should the State Department announce an investigation of this? And should we hear from the Secretary of State defending a U.S. ambassador?
We should have already. We heard from the ambassador's testimony just how dangerous their jobs can be. She was literally in the line of fire. You detailed how we have lost ambassadors in the past. It's a dangerous job and a critical job. They face enough dangers on their own. We can't be in any way hesitant to do everything possible to keep them safe and to make sure that the other ambassadors know that we will do just that, and that those who would threaten them will be halted. So I would like to think would have heard about this, or that we'll hear about it very shortly.
Let me ask you about the ongoing impeachment trial now in the Senate. You've heard a number of Republican senators, David Perdue among them just yesterday, saying that the Senate should not consider new witnesses and new evidence, that was the job of the House. Looking back, should Democrats in the House have waited for courts to order witnesses to testify there, waited longer, in effect, before impeaching the president?
You know, I was torn on that myself because I was so interested in hearing from people like Mr. Bolton and others. But I think in the final analysis, we're probably talking about the possibility of a year, right? A possibility that this takes place after the November election. And clearly, this president needs to be held accountable before that. We've seen how long these courts have taken. Even if they had ruled that, for example, John Bolton had to testify, and he showed up and started taking the absolute immunity defense that others have, that courts have ruled against, that puts it off for 3 or 4 more months and the appeals that go with it. So in the final analysis, you had to move forward to, again, hold the president accountable and educate and inform the American people.
You're seeing the partisan lines form in the Senate here, with some exceptions, because there have been Republican senators who say they're willing to hear from witnesses. But I wonder, as you look at this process going forward, do you believe that this will be a meaningful trial in the Senate, a meaningful consideration of the witnesses and testimony? Or are you concerned that most of the Republicans and even most of the Democrats, for that matter, have already made up their minds?
Look, they take a sworn oath to impartial justice. The American people have asked for that. Over 72% want witnesses. They want the documentation. And they know what it looks like, right? They appreciate the fact that in trials that people don't come there. The jury doesn't say he's guilty, but go ahead. They wait till they hear all the testimony and they see all the documents. I'd like to think that that pressure will give at least 4 Republican senators the intestinal fortitude necessary to demand just that, so the American people can be educated and informed. We'll take it a day at a time. You know, I said we should. I've heard people say, "Well, don't do this unless you're sure you can win." That's not how the Constitution reads. We did our constitutional duty moving forward. It's the Senate's turn.
I want to talk about another issue. You, of course, sit on the Intelligence Committee. What you hear from senior intelligence officials, both in public and private settings, is important to you. A source is telling CNN that top intelligence officials have asked Congress to hold worldwide threats briefings. This is something that is done regularly and in public by senior intelligence officials, that they be held behind closed doors. And the reason, of course, this request coming after last year's testimony, when intelligence chiefs testified and drew the ire of the president for frankly disagreeing with him. Let me just put one of those tweets up on the screen here now, because you get a sense. The intelligence people seem to be extremely passive and naive when it comes to the dangers of Iran. They are wrong, and it goes on there. You know, what is your response to this effort to now hold these in? Seems to avoid the ire of the president.
Yeah, it's a horrible idea. In a democracy, it's tough enough that the intelligence community has to operate secret in an otherwise open government, or at least that's what we strive for. So at least once a year, the core of the intelligence community comes forward and explains in front of the public in an unclassified version exactly what the threats are and what they're doing about it. This is what transparency is all about. It's what the oversight role of the House and Senate committees, select committees on intelligence is all about. To say that they want to move that to a classified session takes away that opportunity to let the public know what those threats are, and certainly now they ought to know what they are and exactly what they're doing to address those threats. The fact that the president didn't like their views shows even more the president doesn't understand and value what the intelligence community does, and he wants them to be his lapdog. That's extremely dangerous. They need to operate independently to keep us safe.
Final question. We've now learned that Iran's missile strike on a U.S. base in Iraq did cause U.S. casualties, though discovered days later, specifically traumatic brain injury, concussions from the effect of those blasts here. I wonder, immediately following, the president, the administration said Iran missed. There was some reporting speculation that Iran deliberately missed, but it looks that those were very near misses. And our reporter on the ground there spoke to witnesses who said that these bombs dropped just yards from where they were. Does this raise questions about what exactly Iran's intention was with those missile strikes, and raise questions about the administration's response?
Well, I think it raises questions about their response and their transparency. All the more reason to bring these things to light publicly and hide what is an extraordinarily opaque administration's tactics. Our concerns and thoughts are that with those injured by this attack, and recognize that our forces are in harm's way, especially now after this strike on Soleimani. So we fight for transparency and the true arguments as to why this took place in the first place.
Well, and TBI is no small thing. Congressman Mike Quigley, good to have you on the program this morning.
Anytime. Thank you.
Up next, more on those U.S. troops injured in the Iran attack. We're going to speak with Ara Damon. She was the first reporter to arrive at the Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq. She spoke to witnesses about it. Let's ask her what she saw.
A lot of healthy foods are very acidic, and they're actually pulling out the minerals from the enamel.
Now you can take control of your home Wi-Fi and get a notification the instant someone new joins your network. Only with Xfinity XFi. Download the XFi app today.
Race for the White House. New season starts Sunday, February 16th at 9 on CNN.
CNN has learned that 11 U.S. service members were injured during Iran's attack on the Al Asad air base in Iraq last week. Those troops are now being assessed for traumatic brain injury. That's a concussion following explosion. Correspondent Ara Damon. She was the first journalist to report from the Al Asad air base, and CNN Pentagon reporter Barbara Starr. So Barbara Starr, the initial reports, the BDAs, the bomb damage assessments as they're called, showed no casualties. These were discovered after the fact. Tell us how and why.
Well, what we do know now is the military followed very standard protocols in combat zones these days. Any troops that are near a blast are assessed for brain injury, concussion, traumatic brain injury. And that's what happened here. As the troops were assessed, they got reports of some of the troops experiencing symptoms. So 11 of them have now been evacuated out of Iraq, 8 to the military hospital in Landstuhl, Germany, 3 to Kuwait, where there's better medical care and they can be properly assessed for this. The Pentagon believes they will be able to report back to be fully evaluated for all of this. So this is something that's that we have seen for so many years now, that so many troops have suffered from, emerged after the fact. The Pentagon wasn't exactly speedy in revealing this. They had originally said no injuries, but after they learned about this, finally late last night, they did.
Yeah, traumatic brain injury, something the Pentagon takes very seriously. I've met people who've been through it. It is no small thing. Now, Arwa, you were on the ground at the base. You spoke to service members shortly after it struck. And what struck me about your reporting is they said, that some of these missiles struck just yards from where they were. Exactly. And what their experience of it was. Did they feel that they were in danger?
Well, Jim, I mean, first of all, it is not surprising, having been there and talked to some of these soldiers, that some of them do have these kinds of brain injuries, just given, yes, how close some of those missiles exploded to them. And then the fact that some of them had to hide in those small bunkers that are intended to protect against rocket or mortar fire, but were in effect protecting troops against a ballistic missile, which is 3,000 times more powerful than your ordinary rocket or mortar that would actually be landing in this area. When we were speaking to them, they talked about how the shock waves reverberated through their bodies, how some of them got knocked around. And it's also worth mentioning that oftentimes with these kinds of, head injuries, the symptoms emerge later, keeping in mind that in the days afterwards, there was still a lot of adrenaline, a lot of their bodies cope with everything that they went through that night, because by all accounts, it was a very physically and emotionally trying experience.
It's a good point you make that those shelters you often see there, that's for rockets and grenades, RPGs. It's not for something this question. Immediate aftermath of this attack, a lot of the characterization from the administration was Iran deliberately missed here, right? That this was in effect a shot across the bow, as opposed to intending to harm U.S. forces. But based on Arwa's reporting and based on the fact that you have soldiers now suffering TBI, are we so sure of that? Was this a nearer miss than originally described?
Well, Jim, I think that original take that the Iranians deliberately were able to avoid U.S. troops was perhaps a political talking point, if you will, from some civilian officials, because the military always felt that they had to assume absolutely if somebody was firing a ballistic missile at them, they were trying to kill them. And in fact, what they will tell you is what they very quickly assessed, given where the damage happened on these bases, there would have been troops there if the U.S. hadn't had that early intelligence warning and been able at least to move them to these bunkers, try and disperse them. So the view of military commanders, perhaps quite different than the political side of the house. Everybody was after de-escalation, so nobody really wanted to talk it up. But military commanders privately felt all along that absolutely the Iranians were out to kill them.
Yeah, that's an interesting, consequential difference. Barbara Starr, Arwa Damon, thanks to both of you. The wife of Andrew Yang, candidate for president, of course, in an exclusive interview with CNN, reveals the personal missions she is on now. This after finally coming forward to reveal she is the survivor of sexual assault.
All my friends are heathens. take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. All my friends are heathens, take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. Welcome to the room of people who have rooms of people that they loved one day docked away. Just because we check the guns at the door doesn't mean our brains will change from hand grenades. You laughing on the psychopath sitting next to you. You laughing on the murderer sitting next to you. You think I'd get here sitting next to you. But after all I've said, please don't forget. All my friends are heathens, take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. We don't deal with outsiders very well. They say newcomers have a certain smell. Yeah, trust issues not to mention. They say they can smell your intentions. You laughing on the freak show sitting next to you. You laugh some weird people sitting next to you. You think I did not get here sitting next to you. But after all I've said, please don't forget. Take it slow. Wait for them to ask you who you know. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. Just to stay away. And now they're outside ready to buzz. It looks like you might be one of us.
Convenient, just what we need.
Like our wireless service, Consumer Cellular. We get everything we need at a really great price.
Consumer Cellular offers talk, text, and data for as low as $20 a month, and they've received the J.D. Power Award for highest customer service 7 times in a row.
Switching was easy. We even kept our phones and numbers.
And more of our money.
Make the switch to Consumer Cellular. Call, go online, or find us at Target.
So, you want to be the leader of the free world? Just how far will you go to get what you want? Will you break your own rules? Will you turn friends into enemies? The race.
In a CNN exclusive, Evelyn Yang, the wife of presidential candidate Andrew Yang, is revealing for the first time that she was sexually assaulted, allegedly by her OBGYN, while she was pregnant with her first child.
At that moment, I knew it was wrong. I mean, I knew I was being assaulted.
Did you tell your husband, Andrew?
No. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I didn't tell Andrew or my family because I didn't want to upset them. I thought, this happened to me. I can process this. I can deal with it. I can it. And
did you?
I tried, but I just didn't want to affect others. And I certainly didn't want Andrew blaming himself for not being able to go with me to these doctor's visits, because Honestly, if he was with me in the room, if anyone was with me in the room, this obviously wouldn't have happened. And at the time, he was traveling a lot for his nonprofit, and most of the scheduling just didn't work out.
CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash joins me now. Dana, this doctor has been accused by multiple women. What's happened to him, and is he still practicing?
He is not practicing. So what has happened is that he lost his medical license as part of a 2016 plea agreement with the Manhattan DA, but he only had to register as the lowest level sex offender. And what makes Evelyn Yang and other survivors so angry is that this doctor never had to go to jail. And not just that, although he was charged on 9 counts involving 6 accusers, he only pleaded guilty to 2 charges involving 2 women, and Evelyn Yang was not one of them. And she told me that it wasn't until after the Me Too movement started that she and others who say that hadn't assaulted them realized, well, wait a minute. In her words, he got off with a slap on the wrist. And this is a DA's office that we're talking about. It's the office of DA Cy Vance. He's the same one who was lenient with Jeffrey Epstein over registering as a sex offender and initially failed to prosecute Harvey Weinstein. And we asked, of course, for a response. The DA's office told CNN that obtaining a felony conviction was the goal in this case, and also said, while we stand by our legal analysis and resulting disposition of this difficult case, we regret that this resolution has caused survivors pain. Now, going back a bit, Evelyn Yang had told no one, as she mentioned, not a soul, about her doctor assaulting her, she says, when she was 7 months pregnant, until after it happened, because she got a letter in the mail saying that had left the practice. She said she got goosebumps, and here's what happened next.
I Googled him, and there it was. There was a headline that said that he had assaulted another woman, and she reported it to the police. And at that moment, everything just stood still. It was this sense of relief, of finally realizing that I wasn't alone in it. He still, because of, right, it wasn't something that I did. It was, this was a serial predator. And he just picked me as his prey.
It was at that point she told husband Andrew.
I just needed to tell someone. I needed to share it in that moment because it felt so big to me. I needed that support. And I told him, and he cried. I mean, he wasn't bawling, but there were tears. Mm-hmm. And he said it's because he remembered when I came home one day ranting about doctors. I said something like, why do they let men be gynecologists? It makes no sense. And he remembered that I had made this comment, and he felt so bad. He felt guilty that he didn't make the connection or ask me more.
Goodness, it's such a powerful testimony there. This doctor was with Columbia University, a very powerful organization. What has been their role in response?
Columbia University still has a lot of questions that need to be answered. And the reason why we're talking about Columbia is because it runs the facility where he practiced. And Hadden was arrested in his office about 6 weeks before the events that Evelyn Yang described, because another patient called the police and said that he had assaulted this other patient. The arrest was voided. Dr. Hadden went back to work. He was unchaperoned, according to Yang. And as she said, that makes what happened to her even more painful, because she said it could have and should have been prevented. She says Columbia University protected Haddon at the expense of other survivors to avoid negative publicity. Now, I should say, CNN, we sent detailed questions to Columbia, including why Dr. Haddon was allowed to return to work after his initial arrest and do so without anybody in the room. The response that we got from the university, in part, basically said that the allegations against Haddon are abhorrent, and they deeply apologize to those whose trust was violated. And what's so incredible is that this has grown.
Reporting, fantastic exclusive interview, and just a deeply, deeply important topic. Dana Bash, thanks very much. We have breaking news now into CNN. We're going to go direct to the White House. Our correspondent, Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, tell us what you know.
Well, Jim, we're learning about 3 to be added to President Trump's impeachment legal defense team. Sources are telling my colleague Pam Brown and I that Alan Dershowitz, the famed TV lawyer who the president has and impeachment, is expected to join the president's defense team, and we've got a statement on that saying that Professor Dershowitz is going to present oral arguments at the Senate trial to address the constitutional arguments against impeachment and removal. While Professor Dershowitz is nonpartisan when it comes to the Constitution, he is opposed to the impeachment of President Bill Clinton and voted for Hillary Clinton. He believes the issues at stake go to the heart of our enduring Constitution. He is participating in this impeachment trial to defend the integrity of the Constitution